Welcome back. First off, I want to thank all of you who have given us 5-star reviews over on iTunes, and that is certainly appreciated. It helps us to stay in alignment with our highest and truest purpose, which is being of service to all of you. And when you give us a 5-star review over on iTunes, it lets iTunes know to share our podcast with other listeners. So thank you for doing so. And if you've loved our past podcasts, which literally thousands of you have because you listen every day, please do remember to give us a 5-star review over on iTunes and include a little pithy comment when you do so. And it is your way of thanking us for this podcast, which hopefully, because so many of you listen every day, is worthy of being thankful for. So the topic of today's podcast is the millionaire myth, why everything you think about wealth is wrong. Now, what motivated Julie and I to come up with this topic today and all these points we're about to share with you is because obviously we're in a political season and you have the haves and the have-nots that are, political hot buttons and all the rest of it. And so what's really important is that you understand clearly what money is for, what money is not for, what essentially wealth is, what wealth isn't, and really remove the ego and the political rhetoric from all of it. And you're going to feel, I think, a sense of clarity and almost a sense of relief that really it's not that complicated in terms of wealth accumulation and why some people do and some people choose not to. So what we're going to do again is we're going to give you some myths today, so stay along with us. And by the way, a lot of you are going to want these points, and these are great points if you wanted to share them on Instagram or share them if you're doing presentations to your office, to your team. And to get the notes from all of our past podcasts, and we have 5,000 plus past podcasts with well over 20 million downloads. If you want the past notes, just go to harrisrealestatedaily.com and just drop in your email address and you'll be in our newsletter, harrisrealestatedaily.com.
Exactly. So when it comes to self-made millionaires and high net worth individuals, financial people call those HNWIs, high net worth individuals, a lot of myths and misconceptions do dominate the public perception, as you said, especially when we're in a political year or environment. From how they accumulate wealth to whether money can truly buy happiness, many of these assumptions are simply not true. Let's break down some of the most common myths about the wealthy using real data to separate fact from fiction.
Let me tell them a story first, okay?
Sure.
All right, so I was raised in a family where people, I'm not going to say it was necessarily left-leaning, but definitely my father in particular stance towards people with money, in retrospect now, I will definitely say was left-leaning. I'll explain to you guys how that manifested. So my nephew Ethan was telling me a story once where him and his dad, my brother John, were standing on a street corner, and I think it was somewhere in Seattle. And some guy in a very expensive car drove by and parked and got out, the whole thing. And Ethan and John, this is Ethan telling me the story. And this happened to Ethan when he was a little boy, right? So Ethan was telling me the story, and he said, my brother's comment to Ethan was, I wonder how many people that guy had to rip off in order to pay for that car. And that thought stayed with Ethan for a long period of time until he got to know Julie and I when he was older and realized that mindset about money was something that wasn't going to work for him in any way whatsoever. Why am I sharing that? Because all of us, unless you were raised with money, frankly, this is not a plague that people that were raised with money generally have. But if you were raised normal, like normal middle class, normal person,
Like most people,
right? You probably have a lot of misinformation about money and about rich people. And so these points are designed to help really clear the air. And so the first one, Julie.
The first one is myth number 1, more money does not make you happier. Well, here's the fact. More money does lead to greater happiness, especially by improving life quality and reducing stress. While the old saying goes, money can't buy happiness, recent research shows that wealth does contribute significantly to overall life satisfaction. Earlier studies suggested that happiness plateaus at around $75,000 a year. And I know you and I both seen those studies and headlines over the years.
Let's just level off there.
Sure.
Think about how insane that is, honestly.
Yeah.
Where can you live on $75,000? There are some rural areas for sure where you can do great.
But not many.
Not many. Yeah. Now, if your house was paid off and you had no college bills and all the rest of it, yeah, you're probably doing all right if you're in some relatively rural place. But the rest of the country is way too expensive when the average home is $400,000 to $500,000.
Especially if you have more than one kid, maybe when somebody's in college, there's lots of expenses.
Kids like to eat, turns out.
Well, even and property taxes and insurance, think how much that's gotten to be.
I know. So a lot of these reports, and here's what's fascinating. When I was researching this first point, Julie, is that I was trying, because I had certainly heard that 75,000 in more expensive areas, 125,000. Your happiness peaks at 125,000, even if you're in these expensive areas.
Yeah.
And it's like there's no way. I mean, your rent's like $7 or $8 a month. You know.
Sure.
And
You're still clipping coupons and flying cheap.
so what I did when I was writing this point is I actually had to do some research on who was writing these reports and who was doing these studies. And all of them were politically motivated. And I didn't spend any more time trying to figure out what their motivation was to try to essentially convince people that they're happy not making really any more than 75,000. I have no idea what their justification for that was, but it was motivated, biased research. And then it turns out I was right, because the more I started to dig, the more I found information that was essentially proves that those are initial reports that had been floating around for 15, 20 years were completely biased and were written for political reasons, which, again, I'm not really clear on. Dear listener, if you know what they are, maybe put it in the comments over on YouTube or Instagram or something. So educate me on what the benefit to a political party would be, convincing people that they don't have to earn a lot of money. But yeah, so Julie, talk about the research that Killingsworth did.
That negates that,
Right.
That we just talked about. So more recent research from Matthew Killingsworth at the University of Pennsylvania challenges that $75,000 plateau claim. Killingsworth's study found that happiness continues to increase as income rises, especially beyond $100,000 a year. And for many, it keeps rising well past $500,000 a year. Why? Wealth offers greater freedom from financial stress, better health care, the ability to outsource chores, and more time for meaningful experiences like travel or hobbies. These factors improve life satisfaction and allow people to focus on personal growth and relationships.
Doesn't that seem obvious?
It does to me.
You know, I saw this other thing on Instagram the other day. It was a misquote from Warren Buffett, where he supposedly said his house in Omaha that he bought in 1922 or whatever the hell it was,
Yeah.
how he would have been better off putting that money in the stock market than buying real estate. That's true. Okay. If he had taken the, 67 cents that he paid for his house,
Yeah.
1,000 years ago, and if he put that in the stock market, for sure, it would have been worth just the compounding effects of the S&P 500 and whatnot. But what that doesn't take into account is he still would have had a housing expense.
This is true.
He still would have had to pay rent someplace. There's no such thing as living for free. So when you read all these different things, you got to wonder what their motivation is for sharing this misinformation with you. And again, I don't know. I truthfully don't know. I don't even have a theory. I'm not even going to try to come up with one because it just doesn't make any sense. Now, this next point I thought was really fascinating.
So myth number 2 is that millionaires get rich quickly. Here's the fact. Wealth building is a slow, methodical process that often takes decades. While it's tempting to think that millionaires get rich quickly, the truth is that most build their fortunes steadily over time. According to a Fidelity investment study, the average person reaches $1 million in net worth around age 37.
Now, let's slow off there. This includes all forms of net worth, including equity in a home.
Okay, good clarification. So the average person reaches $1 million in net worth by 37, and wealth accumulation continues over the following decades. Here's how it lays out. We said $1 million by 37, $5 million net worth reached by 50. Look how long it takes between 37 and 50 to get to $5 million. Then $10 million typically achieved in the early 50s, and 30 to 50 million in net worth often reached in their 60s. So building wealth through consistent saving, investing, and reinvesting obviously takes time.
Now, here's the other thing. I don't have this in our notes, Jules, but the percent of people that have a net worth of 1 million, let alone 30 million, is a tiny, tiny little percent.
It is.
And it's not because of, you could say it's all kinds of different reasons. You could sound like Bernie Sanders if you'd wanted to. But the reality of it, a lot of it has to do with, for example, we know a lot of people accumulate $1 million in net worth because they own real estate. But if you own real estate in certain markets in the country and you just bought a house 5 years ago, congratulations, you probably are a millionaire. So location matters.
It does.
That's not anything about income distribution. That's just basically being in the right place.
And home ownership matters too.
100%.
Yes, we're going to talk about that in a second. So myth number 3, I think, also addresses myth number 2. Millionaires don't save; they just invest big.
So what's the point of this? A lot of people think that, again, I want you guys to think about all the stuff that's being fed to the younger generations about wealth accumulation. All these pictures on social of these, people in their 20s and their 30s who are rolling around in, $3 million Bugattis and telling their stories and how they got rich overnight. And you intuitively know, your grandma would have told you that, that's obviously malarkey. There, I used a word your grandma would have used, malarkey.
Definitely used
right?
malarkey.
That's
Yep.
a grandma word. Right. So intuitively it's not true. And yet so many of us put these false pressures on ourselves, or even worse, even quit trying to become independently wealthy.
Yes, well stated. So the myth here is that millionaires don't save, they just have one big investment, or they, take a lot more risk. Well, here's the fact. Consistent saving is a cornerstone of wealth building. Despite what many believe, millionaires start often with small, consistent savings. A Ramsey Solutions study found that 73% of millionaires regularly saved part of their income, often through 401ks or IRAs and other retirement accounts. Over time, these savings are supercharged by compounding interest. I have 3 examples here, so you can choose and adjust accordingly. Here's the first example. Saving just $500 a month, which nearly all of you listening can do this. Saving $500 a month at an 8% annual return can grow to $750,000 in 30 years. Many millionaires don't make one huge investment. Instead, they invest small amounts regularly and let the power of compounding work for them over time. Now, what if you were to instead invest $1,000 per month with that same 8% annual return for 30 years? That's going to be $1.5 million, $1,500,295. If you invested $5,000 per month, remember the average commission after some expenses is somewhere between $10, $12, maybe $15,000 depending on where you live. So less than one commission check or half of one commission check. You invest $5,000 per month with an 8% annual return for 30 years, you're going to have $7.5 million saved. That's pretty amazing.
Even if you adjust those numbers for inflation, it's still a lot more than having nothing saved. Now, by saving, do you hear some people, again, rich people don't save money. I hate it when I hear people saying that, because they're always trying to flip you into buying some high risk investment. And you're going to see this all the time from people that are trying to sell you into like LP investments into multifamily, stuff like that. Rich people don't own real estate that they live in. Rich people don't save money. Bullshit. They do. They save it in the S&P 500. Statistically, most people who are first generation millionaires in the United States made it through what? Real estate. And how did they keep it and build it? By investing steadily in the boring old S&P 500. I used 8% when I was doing the math for you guys, but the reality of it is the S&P 500 lately, well, as in like last, I think 10 plus years, has been over 10%. So adjust accordingly. This year, I think it's closer to like 18%.
Yes, I think you've told me that. So I think the 8%, we were given conservative estimates,
Right.
and that was over like 50 or 60 years. So what you were just talking about a second ago is myth number 4, that rich people get rich through risky investments. But the fact is that millionaires prioritize low-risk, long-term strategies over high-risk gambles. Although some think that the wealthy make their fortunes through those risky, high-stakes bets, the fact is that most millionaires favor diversified portfolios and steady long-term investments. Vanguard found that the average millionaire holds a mix of stocks, bonds, and guess what? Real estate to spread out that risk. And you'd like to use Warren Buffett as an example. One of the richest people in the world built his fortune through carefully selected investments in companies with strong fundamentals, holding on to them for decades. Didn't he have, I don't know the exact quote, but something to the extent where if you can't explain it, you shouldn't be investing in it?
Well, exactly. If you can't explain what the business is that you're investing in,
That makes sense.
to somebody else, then you shouldn't be investing in it. But more importantly, what Warren is a huge advocate of is Vanguard S&P 500 index funds. And you guys you don't need a fancy wealth advisor to figure all this stuff out. Just Google Bogle. I know this sounds crazy, but it was named after John Bogle, who is the guy who started Vanguard. Google Bogleheads, Bogle heads, Heads. I know it
That's
sounds
right.
weird. 3 fund portfolio and 5 fund portfolio. You might want to throw 2024, 2025. So Google Bogleheads 5 fund portfolio 2025, and you're going to see that there's essentially 3 to 5 different index funds that you should be investing in that are going to essentially, when you invest in an index fund, you're not going to have like a huge, up or a huge down. It's just going to average wherever the markets adjust to. But guess what? I love where the markets have been adjusting to for the last like 10 or 15 years, and you should as well. So that's what the rich people do. Every single person that Julie and I know who are worth, let's say $50, $100 million. When I've talked to them about these various topics, they do have a certain portion of their money that they set aside for what they call placing bets. And that would be for, new startup companies and things like that, money that they're willing to lose. But for the most part, it's in the S&P 500. because it gives you a very consistent return on investment. Exactly. Myth number 5, millionaires don't track their spending. They just show up in our Maze and Bugatti and Ferrari and
Throw
just
the money around.
Exactly.
But the fact is that millionaires are meticulous about budgeting and tracking their expenses. Millionaires keep close tabs on their spending. According to Tom Corley, author of Rich Habits, 93% of millionaires carefully track their expenses. This habit helps them to save more, spend wisely, and invest more over time. I would add, especially considering how many awesome apps and websites there are to be able to do that. We use Monarch, for example.
Yeah, you guys check out Monarch. We don't have any business relationship with them, but we've used a bunch of them, and I compare them probably, I don't know, once a quarter. And Monarch is the easiest to use. It attaches to all your different accounts. It's that's called a net worth tracker, but really it's an expenses tracker. Like I found something this morning that was on, like it'll give you a report of all the charges that are happening on all your different credit card accounts, all the sources of income, if you got paid dividends, if the money was then reinvested, all the whole things. All of it is completely transparent. It's a beautiful app. Definitely suggest you guys use Monarch. And Monarch, if you're listening and you'd like to sponsor this podcast,
Please do.
You know what to do.
That's exactly right. But the point of bringing that up is that there's really no excuse but to track your money, even if you're not yet a millionaire.
Well, it gives you a sense of calm, too. I mean, really, it does.
Yeah. You end the fear of the unknown and hiding out from what's probably going on financially.
You remove the emotion from money.
Exactly.
Because the Monarch will tell, and this is a great, assuming you're married, let's assume you're married and you are wanting to, be on the same page with your spouse, your partner with regards to finances. Monarch's a great way to do it because it's disinterested in emotions. It's just going to tell you the facts.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. Okay, myth number 6. Millionaires only make money through high-paying jobs. Or you might say, I'm not going to be able to be a millionaire unless I have a high-paying job. Well, the fact is that many millionaires are self-employed or business owners, just like you listeners. While high-paying jobs do help, many millionaires create their wealth through entrepreneurship. James Stanley's research found that 2/3 of millionaires are either self-employed or own their own businesses. Business ownership allows them to build multiple income streams.
Sounds familiar?
Yes, it does, and reinvest profits for growth.
Now, here's the reason I put that point in there. Because you are falling prey to believing that people who have a lot of money have basically won the lottery in some form or another or had a liquidity event. They got invested in the right IPO. They had a home run on some, easy button thing that turned out it worked out. That's not at all true. A lot of them are small business owners like all of you, dear listener. And what they're doing is they're squirreling away a portion of the money that they make off the top of every commission check that they make. And then they reinvest that in the S&P 500 and other things that are going to make them money. What your business is, what your real estate practice is, in essence, assuming you're making profit, it's an ATM machine. And with that money, reinvest that in things that are not dependent on your labor. And that, again, I love the S&P. Julie loves the S&P, but I'll tell you another standalone stock. Costco is a home run. Look into things like that. Do your own homework on this. Be your own wealth advisor. Don't be intimidated by all of this. It's actually very simple and very intuitive. Be careful when you're talking to quote unquote wealth advisors. Find out, here's the way you could here's a litmus test for your wealth advisor who you're getting financial information from. Ask if they're trying to sell you anything. Find out what they're trying to sell you, because a lot of time it's going to be insurance products. It's going to be things that are very risky that pay them massive amounts of commission. If they're trying to sell you anything, there's a 99.9% chance that you don't want to do business with them, because they know statistically that the S&P 500 is going to beat whatever the hell over time that they're trying to pitch to you. So just do that.
There you go. Well said. All right. Myth number 7, that millionaires got there alone. But the fact is, millionaires often leverage mentorship and networking to grow their wealth. Wealth is not accumulated in isolation. Building a strong network of mentors and peers helps open doors to new opportunities, insights, and knowledge that accelerate wealth building. Many successful people, like Richard Branson, for example, credit much of their success to the people they surrounded themselves with.
Why did I put that point in there? Because it's not about necessarily looking for new businesses to invest in when you're in the real estate industry. It's about making sure the money you're spending money on, the money you're quote unquote investing into your business is actually worth doing, or whether or not just basically depleting profit that could have otherwise gone to investing in the S&P 500 and things like that. And a lot of our coaching clients, especially the higher end coaching clients that Julie has, that's what we're doing. We're helping them set up their financial plan. We're getting a lot of folks that are very well established, earning hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars in real estate. They want to be Julie's personal coaching clients. And we're going through we're helping them with their real estate business, but really most of them are transactional, don't really need our help. Where they need our help is saving more money, getting their health in check, doing all the things to make it so they have longevity financially, mentally, and obviously health-wise as well. Mm-hmm. This is what higher end coaching is all about. And of course, we're going to help you build your systems and make your business more productive. In a market like this, what you're experiencing, what we're going to be experiencing, all of us, in the next 6 to 12 months, is a tsunami of change that's going to make the commission sharing lawsuits look like a walk in the park, because the AI is going to give all of us an opportunity to really accelerate our businesses and really, frankly, drive a hell of a lot more profit to the bottom line as we're able to elegantly and easily, and frankly, in a lot of cases for no money, get rid of a lot of the marketing and the expenses for staff and things like that. The first thing that's going to go for sure is anybody that basically is a mid or low level skill-based person who's on the phone. Customer service type people, transactional type people, the people that you're,
happening.
You're held hostage to your transaction coordinators, to your marketing person. All those people are going to be easily delegated. And that's what's going to happen. So that's going to give you an opportunity to actually make more net profit because your expense structure is going to go away. If you're interested in learning more about really taking your business and your personal life to the next level, and you'd like to be considered to be part of Julie's coaching schedule, please do text me directly at 512-758-0206. And when you do, please text me with a little bit of information about yourself, 512-758-0206. This is Julie's schedule is a small schedule. She doesn't really want a lot of clients. This is not Premier Coaching or one of our other programs. And we're only looking for really people that are the best of the best or real close to being the best of the best. So if that's you, text us directly at 512-758-0206. Give me a little bit of information about yourself. And then if I think you're a match, then I'll forward you off to Julie. And then you guys can, determine whether or not you're a match for her and she's a match for you. So text me at 512-758-0206.
All right, so myth number 8, that self-made millionaires don't give back. Oh, they're just so greedy. They don't do anything philanthropic. But the fact is that wealthy individuals actually are highly philanthropic. Many millionaires and billionaires are major contributors to charitable causes. The National Philanthropic Trust found that high net worth individuals donate a much larger percentage of their income to charity than the average person. The Giving Pledge, which was started by both Bill Gates and Warren Buffett, encourages billionaires to donate the majority of their wealth to charity. So yes, they are philanthropic. Now, myth number 9, I think is fascinating.
This one's the big one. This is where I spent probably 2 or 3 hours researching this one point, okay?
Yep.
Now, this next one is political, if you want to read it that way, but it wasn't intended that way.
It's factual, though.
It's factual. And myth number 9, which is the most important myth, millionaires don't pay their fair share. Oh, sorry.
The mother of all myths.
I said it in a snarky way.
You were.
I was channeling my inner Zoe. Millionaires don't pay taxes. Myth number 9.
Okay, so here's the fact. Millionaires pay a substantial portion of all taxes in the U.S. Contrary to the myth that the wealthy avoid taxes, the top 1% of earners, many of whom are millionaires, pay nearly 40% of all federal income taxes, according to the Tax Foundation. As wealth grows, so does the tax burden. Here's how the numbers break down at various net worth stages, focusing on a state like Ohio.
Now, here's what I did. So I researched. So I wanted to know, somebody who has $1 million net worth, remember this is someone who's in their late 30s, how much money do they earn per year? And realistically, for them to get, they've been on the job for, let's say, for maybe 10 years or longer, and they've been, paying their bills, paying their taxes. I wanted to know approximately how much taxes had they paid to the point where they had a net worth of $1 million. And they probably had the net worth of $1 million, most certainly just because they lived in an area where real estate appreciated rapidly.
That's right. And so we're going to go through 4 examples that use the same criteria: the income, the taxes paid yearly, and then the cumulative taxes paid by age, wherever for each example. So $1 million in net worth. Typical income is around $150,000 to $300,000 annually. The taxes paid per year in combined federal, state, and local are between $50,000 and $95,000 per year. Okay, the cumulative taxes for somebody in that income bracket with $1 million net worth, paid by age 37, around $250,000 to $350,000 cumulatively paid in taxes.
So in their working careers, That means they would have paid $250,000 to $350,000 in taxes, and they're paying on average of $50,000 to $95,000 per year in taxes, and their average income is $150,000 to $300,000 annually. That was very hard information for me to find, but you will find even more interesting as we go into the higher net worth brackets. In $5 million net worth, the average income is $500,000 to $1 million annually. Why? Because you're older. Remember, this is someone who maybe is close to 50, so they've been on the job longer. Maybe their business has flourished. Maybe they have multiple sources of income. So just expand your thinking. So they have an annual income of $500,000 to $1 million annually, $500,000 to $1 million. The taxes they pay annually, ready for this, listener, is $200,000 to $420,000 annually, again, depending on where they live. If they live in a place like California, between the state and federal taxes, they're paying, I think it's 53%, if I remember correctly. I didn't put any of the different state information in there because people would have said I was being political, and I'm not trying to. The total cumulative taxes that someone would have paid by the time they hit 50 is $1.5 million to $2.5 million. That's their lifetime taxes they would have paid by the time they were 50 is $1.5 million to $2.5 million, and that's for someone with a net worth of $5 million. Remember, dear listener, aren't you being told that the rich don't pay their fair share? Julie, keep going.
10 million in net worth, income around $1.5 million annually, taxes paid annually $650,000 to $700,000, and cumulative taxes paid by the early 50s is likely more than $3.5 million to taxes. All right, so what if you're in the $50 million net worth category? Income is likely around $5 million annually, taxes paid around $2 million annually, and cumulative taxes paid by the age of 60, because again, to your point, they're older, that's taken a while to get to that kind of net worth, $10 to $15 million contributed in taxes.
Now, how many of you, and I was this way too, by the way, how many of you thought the rich don't pay their fair share, wherever the hell that means? Is that not your fair share? Did I not just rattle off some really huge numbers just now? Seems to me those are not small numbers. Okay, so how many of you believe that the rich don't pay their fair share? How many of you believe that the rich use all these taxes and all these trusts and all these fancy, all these cheats, right? Hacks to basically get out of paying taxes? It's not true. And this information I found, by the way, was reported by the government. I told you, these reports are all publicly available, but they've been politicized to create dissension in our society between the rich and the poor, because if you consider yourself poor, then you're obviously going to believe that you had your opportunity stolen from you by the rich, and then you're going to most likely vote for somebody who says they're going to try to even the level of playing field for you.
Yes, that's right. So let's button this up with the final summary thought here.
And this is huge.
Yes, the typical American household making around $70,000 annually pays about $7,000 to $8,400 in taxes annually, which totals about $210,000 to $250,000 over 30 years. This means that by the time someone reaches $50 million in net worth, they've paid 60 to 70 times the taxes of the average household. Additionally, it's important to note that about 8 to 9% of U.S. households, or roughly 11.6 million households, have a net worth of $1 million or more as of 2022. This illustrates that while millionaires represent a small portion of the population, they contribute a disproportionately large share of the country's tax revenue. Again, these are facts. This is not speculation. These are not sound bites. We're facting you.
Now, why is this important? Because you may have been led to believe that rich people are somehow evil. After all, they don't pay taxes. After all, they don't, donate anything to charities. After all, right? But now we're giving you the facts. And here's the ultimate relief valve for all of this. Here's a simple definition of rich. It's merely where your money works for you and you no longer have to work for your money. In other words, the quest that all of us are on, if you really drill down and ask yourself why you're, building your business, why you're doing the things professionally you're doing, because you have to, right? You got bills to pay. But ultimately, what do you want? You want a sense of freedom. Freedom from what? And so where you get into this, where it really gets fascinating, is if you were rich, where you no longer had to work for money, and your money was working for you, if you had enough money coming in passively every single month that you didn't have to work anymore, are you following me here? And you can't accomplish that in your lifetime, even if you're, older, okay? Would you vote the same way? Would you live in the same community? Would you spend your time on this planet doing the same thing if you no longer had to work for money? How many of you would? Some of you would, I'm sure you. Julie and I still do what we love to do. I love doing this podcast with Julie and some of the other things we do professionally. We don't have to. We still choose to. but we don't live in Central Ohio anymore, So how many of you would basically dress the same, live the same? I'm not saying you're going to go out and buy a new Bugatti. I'm not saying you're going to move to Monaco and blow all your money and all of a sudden you're going to become some sort of... No, most of you are just simply going to embrace that you're feeling free, where your money works for you and you no longer have to work for your money. Don't believe you can't accomplish it. And anytime anybody tells you that you can't accomplish it or tells you somehow the opportunity isn't there for you to do it, I want you to remember the notes from today's podcast. It's about earning money consistently, investing money consistently, and using the eighth wonder of the world, as Warren Buffett calls it, which is compounding interest.
Exactly. And all of you listening can follow the path to becoming a millionaire if you're not already. I'm sure some of our listeners are. But it's not quick or easy. It requires consistent saving, smart investing, and careful money management over many years. Again, which all of you listening can do. The myths surrounding millionaires, from their supposed avoidance of taxes to how quickly they get rich, don't reflect reality. Wealth brings freedom and happiness, but it also comes with a substantial tax burden and a long journey of discipline and patience. By adopting these habits, anyone can start building wealth. Just remember, it's a marathon, not a sprint. So I challenge all of our listeners, what are you going to do with this information? Maybe you're somebody that's never consistently saved. Start with $500 a month. Start with $1,000 a month. You can do that and be smart about it.
I'll tell you what you can do. There's a calculator online. It's called the Monaco calculator, Monaco financial calculator. I think I got the name wrong, but there's another shortcut. Just go to ChatGPT 4.0, and then I want you to put in, and you can play with this. I am, 42 years old. I earn this much per year. I live in this state. I have... you don't even know, maybe you don't know how much you're, paying in state taxes and federal taxes, the whole thing. But you got to give Chat all the variables. I want to set aside this much money per month and say into the S&P 500 because then it can do historical averages, right? I owe this much money on my house. I owe this much, I want to get to the point by the time I'm 10 years into the future or 15 years in the future where I have enough money coming in passively. And just set the whole scenario up, just as if you were talking to somebody, and you will be shocked the report that you get out of ChatGPT. I've done that for a lot of Julie's coaching clients. I've done that for some of the people in our EXP Realty group. And it is just absolutely staggering. Like, for example, I'll tell you something else that's really interesting. It is really hard to rationalize paying off a mortgage for a lot of you if your interest rate is less than 3%. You'd be nuts to pay it off, okay? But there's going to come a point, and really, let's say you have 15 years left on your mortgage, and in 15 years you want to be not necessarily, you want to be retired. I don't even know what the hell that word means, but let's just say you want to be retired. Well, you can actually go to Chat and you can ask it how much additional I have to pay to have this mortgage paid off in 10 years. And then I want you to ask the secondary question: how much more money would I have if I, instead of paying this mortgage off in advance, put it into the S&P 500 over the same 10-year time frame? And having done this for probably 14 people so far, I'll tell you what the answer is. 100% of the time, you're better off if you just invest in the S&P 500, depending on what the interest rate on your mortgage is. Mm-hmm. But almost always, you're better off if you just invest the money because the money is going to accumulate to a larger number. And if you chose to, at that point, just pay the mortgage off, you could. But even then, what's going to happen is inflation is going to cause the mortgage payment. Let's say you're paying $4,000 a month now. Well, in 10 years or 15 years, that's going to probably be the equivalent of $2,000 a month. And you're going to be making probably, $7,500 a month or $10,000 off your S&P 500, with collecting the dividends, all these things, right? So do some real homework and explore all the different variables that are out there for ways for you to accumulate money. Don't let anybody sell you into the belief that you can't be free, because ultimately that's the damn reason you took so much risk, and that's really what your heart desires. If you go through it, like you've accumulated the houses, the cars, all the things. You've done the traveling, you've had all the amazing experiences. Really what you want more than anything is a sense of freedom, where you no longer have to do what you don't want to do when you don't want to do it. You now can do whatever the hell you want to do when you want to do it at whatever level you choose to do it at. The only way you can do that, frankly, is if you have a combination of health and wealth. Those are the things. And if you don't have those things, then you're going to, obviously, maybe you played the game wrong. So you want to consider this when you're looking towards your future and be incredibly optimistic, because you happen to have been born at one of the best times, if not the best time in history to be alive, in the best country on planet Earth, especially when it comes to creating opportunity and creating future wealth accumulation. And I really do believe, and there's no reason, I'm looking for reasons to be wrong, that the real estate market is going to absolutely take off the next 6 to 12 months, probably more like the next 90 to 120 days. And the AI boom is going to create more of a surge of opportunity than we've seen. It's going to be far bigger than the internet revolution.
And if you want to be surrounded by people who are like-minded, who are focused, who are disciplined, and who can help you do all of this, then go to Premier Coaching. Sign up as a Premier Coaching client, or maybe you should be in my private schedule. Either way, we are here to help you.
And the information to sign up for Premier Coaching is in today's show description, or just go to premiercoaching.com. In the meantime, have a fantastic day. We'll talk with you on the show tomorrow.